All right, so we're back here on another episode of Commanders in the Chat, episode 51, and we're here in the post-game edition of Commanders in the Chat. Obviously, the Commanders fall again to the Titans by a final score 21-17, 1-4 on the regular season, and currently on a 4-game losing streak. So it's funny when we did the show Tuesday, Thursday, when I got Teron, who covers the Titans for ESPN NFL Nation. I had to score 21-17, but obviously I had Washington on that one. So, Dad, if I would have had the money line on that, like as far as from a total, like if I would have did the 38, I have a little bit of money in
You would have
my
made a little bit
pocket.
of something.
Right. So maybe I need to start doing those, like maybe at least doing the total scores. But that's here no there. So what's going on, Rob?
I didn't get to watch the game live. I was listening to. I had to work this morning, but going back through and watching it on the NFL on NFL.com, you know, there's one thing I learned about this team today, and it's that I have no idea what this team's problem is because
Yeah.
all three facets of the game played well today. Defense played well, had 5 sacks. Carson Wentz, I think, threw for like 379,
350. Yeah, was it 379? Yeah, it was 370. Yeah.
359. I'm sorry. He threw for
359. Yeah.
359, 2 touchdowns, one pick, obviously, that ended the game. Tressway played lights out, 6 punts, 247 yards. He's a staple in our team now, so we might as well highlight his stats every single game.
Right.
But all three aspects of the game played well. I just don't know. And the numbers again, just like last week against Dallas, numbers are very similar. We had more first downs. The one thing that killed us was our third down efficiency on offense. We were 1 for 11. We were only in the red zone once, which is at the end of the game, which is surprising. Don't really know what this team's problem is. Is it the players? I don't know if it's players because again, the players played well.
Yeah.
Is it the coordinators because they put, for the most part, they put players in the right position to succeed? Scott Turner and Jack Del Rio. Then you have to go look at position coaches. Again, our liability as it is every week is the secondary, which gave up big plays. I think gave up like 4 or 5 huge plays. So I don't really know what the is it the coordinators or is it the position coaches?
Yeah, I mean it's one of the things where I think it's really like when it comes down to the execution of the plays, like it's kind of one of the things where it's funny how we look at all these losses. It's almost like a microcosm or kind of it's a theme for every loss. Where this was the perfect week where we said, we even talked about it last week. I was talking about how we have a great personnel, but sometimes when it comes down to coaching and execution, we fall short. Like this team is good enough to win in this league, and that's where it's kind of it's weird to think here that we're sitting here at 1-4 with a 4-game losing streak. And like you said, this game was a great opportunity for them to win. Like they had great opportunities, and especially considering the fact you look at pretty much their wide receiver core. I mean, Robert Woods was the only one that was really, as far as that was somewhat affordable that we looked at going into this matchup. And I still think that we did a great job on Derrick Henry. I think to only give him 102 yards, and he really, and they stacked the box and they did their thing with him, and he still was able to get. We knew he was going to get his, but he didn't beat us, and that's the beauty thing about it. Where at least that was kind of what we envisioned in the preview, where we know he's gonna get his, but just don't let that affect the as far as when we talk about like how this game was lost, or in this case. And I think the thing that really is going to bite them in the butt is the execution. I think that Cam Sims pass, that's what Cam Sims throw, where it was, they called a challenge on that. And I'm thinking to myself, he didn't catch the ball. And even even with Cam Sims, you could tell, you look in his body language, he knew he didn't catch the ball. So that's why a part of me was like, I was shocked that they challenged it, because I'm like, there's really no need to challenge, because even if he wasn't even really vocal about it, he was just, hey, I dropped it. So, and then when essence, what ended up happening in that situation, you lose a timeout, and then when we're in the red zone, we only, really, well, I think we only had like one timeout at that time. I think we had one then, but that thing where, hey, you could have used one of those timeouts, you had a running play and just see what you could do on that run play. So that's one of those where this, I think, like we talked about it before we kind of went on air, where this loss I could take, this loss I can stomach, because at least there was a opportunity for us to win this football game. Like there wasn't, we talked about, before we went on air as well, where this wasn't like being down 22-0 at halftime against Detroit,
Right.
down 24-0 at half, and then pretty much, last week in Dallas. So this one is like, if it was a situation where this was maybe if it was like a third or fourth game and this is like our first loss or something like this, you would take it. But I think what makes it even worse today is because, coming off a 3-game losing streak and then have this, and it's almost like a golden opportunity that slips it, because in my mind I was thinking, okay, we win today, we got a short week coming up this week, and like, hey, if we can go to Chicago and be 3-3 by Friday, we'll be at 500 and we'll still be within striking distance of our NFC East foes. But now I think we've dug ourselves in deep of a hole. So I think a lot of people are more like just upset because of the 4-game losing streak, more so than anything.
Yeah, and this is the first game of that 4-game losing streak where we've been competitive for most of the game. The Lions game, the final score was close, but again, up until halfway through the third quarter, actually I think closer into the fourth quarter, it wasn't a competitive game. The Lions controlled the entire game. The Philly game was a disaster from start to finish. Dallas was kind of close in the beginning, but we're going up against Cooper Rush. Nobody should be proud of being close in the first half against Cooper Rush. Nothing to take away from him. But this is the first game in that streak that we felt that we were in it the entire time, and there were flashes. It's not like, again, the last 3 games were just completely dominated. De'Ami Brown finally showed up, a year and a half into his career. Montez Sweat finally showed up with 2 sacks. Again, me and you, we're not one for moral victories, but understanding who this team is and what we're pretty much expected to do this season, now that we're going into the second quarter of the season, I think we both have accepted that this is not a playoff team. This isn't a contender. This is let's see what we have going forward, start evaluating the roster kind of, and mostly evaluating this coaching staff. How can this coaching staff finish off the season? Should they return? A lot of people say no. I'm one of those people. I think they should have been fired last week. They're definitely not going to be fired this week, obviously, with the game on Thursday. So it's just going to be interesting how this coaching staff handles everything going forward. And honestly, I'm very, very curious to see how we perform on Thursday. We're going up against what I would call an inferior opponent in the Bears. They've looked really bad, with the exception of that Week 1 win against Trey Lance and the Niners, not Jimmy G. I think that's a different ball game if Jimmy G plays that game. So who's going to benefit more, or who's going to be less of it at a disadvantage coming off of the short week? And it's going to be interesting to see what this team does going forward.
And I think, even to kind of fast forward to Thursday, where both of these teams are definitely coming off of heartbreaking losses. Obviously, Chicago pretty much was down in that game against Minnesota. Not Minnesota, but Chicago comes roaring back and pretty much taking advantage of that game, and then falls short, at the end. So, like you said, this is another team where this could potentially be a golden opportunity where, this is where, you look at their offensive weapons, and then, with that's concerned, hey, that could be definitely a great matchup for us going forward. But like I said, this it's weird. Like it's almost like we've been in these positions like in a weird way. Like last year, I think about Halloween when we lost to Denver, and I think that at that time we were 2-6. Yeah, we were 2-6 going into our bye week, and I remember that game was it kind of almost eerily reminded me of that game in a sense. Well, even though it wasn't such an offensive, bad, as far as bad offensively, but it was kind of one of those where that's a game that got away from us, and I think that's how I feel like. It feels like deja vu. I think that's where I think more so than anything. Like it's upsetting, so what was your thoughts that on the end zone, our play in the red zone, that final drive?
I understand it from a coaching perspective. Being down there with no timeouts, your only option really is to throw. Majority, you could have afforded to run one play, being able to maybe try to get, but that's with Carson knowing, and really the whole team knowing the entire playbook to possibly call two plays at once in the sense of, hey, we're going to run this play. If it doesn't score, get back to the line, and this is the play we're running immediately after, and then kind of read the defense, go from there. It sort of looked like Scott Turner, his playbook isn't really meant for the red zone, because the two plays that the second and third down play that were ran looked very similar. I almost thought for a second they were the same exact play, just flipped.
Yeah.
But Carson kind of he didn't stare down. He didn't stare down McKissic, but he was looking left the entire way, and they kind of knew that's where he was going because he did it the play before. I'm not overly upset with it. I'm not mad at it. I'm disappointed that it ended in an interception. I don't know how it'd feel if it would have ended, because even if McKissic would have caught it, I don't think he was deep enough to get the touchdown, and they hit him immediately. But I think overall, Carson's decision making was okay. It wasn't bad. It wasn't good. It was just. Honestly, it was a hell of a play by Kevin Long. Let's not take away from the defense. That diving play by a linebacker to have those kind of hands in that play, it's a hell of a play by him. So I would actually give him more credit than I would to look at Carson Wentz as a bad throw or a bad decision. I was okay with it. It just sucked the outcome, because let's say it would have gone our way, they would have scored. We would not even be discussing what we thought about that final drive or that final play.
Yeah. And that's where it's interesting. I think that play is kind of, and like it was to a point where we almost kind of got a taste of an interception, because Tart was on, I think I forgot what down that was. He was on the verge of making a play on that ball. So it was kind of
the second down. That was right before.
That was right. That was the next. That was the play before the interception. Yeah. And you're like, oh boy, but it's just one of those things where it's just like, you're gonna run that risk, and like you said, I think because with the timeout, not having a timeout really killed us in that predicament. Because we all know, like, when you're throwing it in the red zone, in the end zone, it's a condensed field, so you're gonna run into that. It's not like we got a guy on the island, or you can play prevent defense. If you're only 2 yards short, everybody gonna collapse around that area. So it's gonna be a dangerous throw through regardless. And it's kind of one of the things where it's really difficult to even maneuver in that spot. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's like, I mean, and I'm not, I mean, people, and I know people saying, bench Wentz and all that. Like, honestly, you can't because he has to play at least 70% of the snaps. Unless you want your second round pick to go to Indianapolis,
right?
So y'all trust me. You want to keep him, and like, to me, I don't. This is one of those where I don't. In the weird way about this game, even though Carson Wentz threw the interception, but this isn't gonna fall on him. I feel as though like the issue I think at hand is, but Yeah, but okay. But anyway, I digress. But yeah. Anyway, but hey, it is what it is. They laugh now, but come November, if we come roaring back, I want to clip this. You know
Or come April when we're trying to decide between C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young.
exactly. We had a
Who'll be
quarterback of the
laughing then?
future. Who'll be laughing now? Yeah, and I think that's the thing where I look at the loss. Like, I mean, out of all the four losses that we had, this one it sting. But this is almost like if we lost by a field goal. That's how I really feel. It's almost like, hey, it is what it is. It really
Yeah,
sucks that we're in this spot, and it's just one of those things where just the execution of it, it's just like, damn if you do, damn if you don't. And I think if you look at any of the top quarterback, even the elite quarterbacks in this league, that's a hard throw to make. I mean, we've had situations, you know, where guys have thrown in the thrown right in the end zone, and bad things have happened. I mean,
yeah,
it's bound to happen. So it's just one of those where the only thing that my biggest thing was, I wish we would have had the extra timeout, because at least we could have at least got a running play. We could have got something to stop that clock, because at that time you really can't do. And the thing about being that close, you're gonna run that risk of, if you snap the ball, Tennessee gonna do something to finagle with that football. It's gonna be one of those where you're just not gonna. It's like a bowl well.
hmm So,
But
and I think this is one of those games where Ron Rivera, I'm sure I haven't seen the press conference yet, but this is one of the games where if he were to say something like, "Oh, we're a couple plays away, or we just got to fix a couple things, and we're right where we need to be," this is the game to say that after. Not after getting blown out by the Eagles, not after getting blown out by Cooper Rush. This is a game where you can say there's a few tweaks, because this is what that game looked like. A few things here and there, a couple different calls. I think one of the passes to, I think, Curtis Samuel or De'Ami Brown, I can't remember which one, I thought was a pass interference. I think it was late in the fourth quarter. But to Patrick's question, where's McLaurin getting doubled? Yes, I'm not so much he's getting doubled. He's getting most of the attention. Obviously, he's wide receiver number one. Not only that, you look at how much time Carson Wentz has in the pocket to go through his reads. Most of Terry McLaurin's routes take time to develop. Curtis Samuel is the one running those short routes. Same with Jahan Dotson was running kind of the and the post routes. McLaurin's routes, for the most part, take time to develop. If you notice, when McLaurin is getting the ball, it's on the curls, it's on the quick slant, letting him do something. Now, is that something that Scott Turner should implement more of? Yes, absolutely.
And yeah, and that's what, and to Pat's point, where I think, and that's the thing where even we talked about it in the preseason, where it's like an embarrassment of riches, in a sense where you got four guys that literally are the same type of wide receiver.
Yeah.
So you can always switch them around. Like, Terry always have to be outside. Like you said, he can do a crossing route. You can do all kinds of stuff. Get the defense confused. But that's not saying that, and that comes down to the coaching. Almost to my analogy last week about having the food and having the groceries, but not having the recipes to cook. And that's, I think, where it is, because, and that's the beauty of our wide receiver core, where, hey, you got guys that are interchangeable parts. It's not like we don't have a singular wide receiver. Oh, this person is good for this route. This person's good for that route. Or one's good outside, one's inside. One can do a curl, one can do a drag. All of them can do the same thing. So they're the Swiss Army knife. They all got blades, and they all can cut.
Right. And just like Patrick just said, his next comment, 100% got to figure out a way to get him the ball. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Put him in those spots. And just like I said, whenever Terry does get the ball, they're on the short routes, the hitches, the slants, and he's breaking tackles going for 12, 15, 20 yards, almost a piece. There was at one point, this team was averaging 10 yards a play, early in the second quarter, I think it was. Like that, those are the kind of things, and it kind of hurts us. I will say it does hurt us in the red zone, having Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, if he were to play, De'Ami Brown, and Curtis Samuel. They're all kind of the same small, shifty, fast players. We don't have a Mike Evans or Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson where we could throw that fade up and let him go get the 50-50 ball.
Okay, yeah.
So it does hurt us in the red zone, but Scott Turner, he tries not to be in the red zone a lot. He likes those big plays. Honestly, it's that offensive line. If we get that offensive line squared away, give Carson Wentz a full 3.5 to 4 seconds to go through his reads, go through his progressions, let Terry run those routes that take time to get open, and won't have any problem. The biggest problem with this team is that offensive line.
For sure. And like you look at this week where it was evident. And it's like in Tennessee, they to perfection, where it's like they exploited that weakness. So that's one thing too, where they did what they were supposed to do in that predicament, and just going back to kind of to Terry's point, where like you said, he has an opportunity, and I think you said and that kind of be one of those where, and like even to your point, Rob, where you said like Scott Turner really like the being in the red zone. You look at the two scoring plays. I mean, one was for 75 yards, and then the other one was for 30 for De'Ami Brown. So, to your point, where and then it's just one of those where it's just like, and then our boy Nick Martin, he just looked like, I think who was it? I think it might be Fred Smoot that said they had him on skates all game. I forgot. I think it was Fred Smoot that said they had him on skates. And this is where
he would say.
Yeah, so I think it was Fred Smoot that said he was on skates all day. But but yeah, and like you said, and you have to give Carson Wentz the time. I think that's one thing too where what sometimes get lost in, especially when we talked about the last previous two games where, obviously Carson was getting sacked 9 times that first game. And we, pretty much were saying, hey, it's those 9 sacks are pretty much a combination of him and also a combination of that line as well. So I think it's one of those where it's like a lion's share type of blame for this.
Yeah.
But like a game like this, like you said, and it's one of those where this could be I'm hoping that this is a game that can kind of turn everything around. Because to me, and this is one of where you just understand, hey, you're that close. Like these are kind of games that you want to be in when it's that you had an opportunity to win this football game, and and I was even even the drives that they had even going into the fourth quarter, I was pretty much impressed. And then stopping Tennessee, and that's one thing too, where I think at one time they were like 0-8. Converting on third down at one point. Like we were stopping them on third down. I was like really impressed about what we did on that end. And like you said, Montez Sweat had a hell of a game. He was getting pressure and all that. And, and then that opened up the floodgates. You had guys like, Jonathan Allen doing his thing. And it's just one of those where, and then even with that, and then even with the interception, we only had 1 turnover in this game. So that's another positive thing you look in his loss where, if the ball bounced a certain way, we could be talking about this. And it's not saying, like you said, it's not going to be like a moral victory, but a moral loss. But it's one of those things, hey, this is something that, especially in the short week, this is the kind of game that, hey, we'll have to fester on this for a week. We got 4 days to take care of business. And then from there, essentially, what happens on Thursday, and then, you get yourself, hopefully you come out with that victory, and then you get yourself 10 days and get ready for Green Bay. So, and at this point in this season, you really got to look at it from a standpoint of one game at a time, where, a lot of people think, oh, the schedule looks a little different, obviously, with everything that's going on, but this is definitely a good opportunity if, they've learned their lesson in this game, it's going to translate to Thursday. Yeah. So, and, so that's what we always look at these shows and these games where, hey, what do you learn from this loss and what can you take away? And so my thing is, what was your thoughts on Ron Rivera? Because he even said that, it's not time to panic. He said, I hate that. I'm going to let you talk about that first.
I get why he says it. Yes, as a head coach, you don't want to press the panic button in, after a week 5 loss. I think to us he's saying that, but I think he knows damn well it's time to panic. A week 5 loss, you're sitting at 1-4. This isn't 2019 where you're sitting at 1-4 with the other 3 teams in the division. You're sitting at 1-4 with the Giants at 4-1 right now. Yep. The Eagles, last I saw, they were tied with the Cardinals at 17. They could possibly move to 5-1, and then depending on what the Cowboys are able to do at LA, the Rams haven't looked like a Super Bowl repeat champion so far this year, and Cooper Rush has been doing enough and a little bit more to win ball games. I mean, we watched it last week. Even though we're a terrible defense, Cooper Rush was still making plays where he needed to make plays. We could be sitting at 1-4 with the rest of the division at 4-1 later on tonight when the Sunday night game kicks off. It is definitely the time to panic.
Yeah,
you haven't lost 4 games in a row, close nail biters on the last second field goal with a call not going your way. You've gotten blown out 3 of these 4 games. It is definitely time to panic. He and it should be time to panic for him personally, not just for the team and the organization and the fan base. Him specifically, his seat is probably the hottest of all the coaches in the league right now. Yeah. You wanted full and total control over this roster. You got it. You let people like Brandon Scherff go. You let people like Tim Settle, Matt Ioannidis go. You let all these people go to bring in your Carolina guys who were in Carolina back in 2012 when you coached, thinking that they're going to do something. Trey Turner is probably one of the worst offensive linemen I've ever seen in recent memory. And I'm sure he's fine. He's like, 28, 29, pushing 30. You know, he didn't get a lot of reps. We talked about this last week or 2 weeks ago. He didn't get a lot of reps in the offseason because he was resting his body. Like, you wanted full control over this roster. You got it, and you're sitting at 1-4 in year 3. Yeah. You've gotten worse every single year. It's time to panic for him.
Yeah, and like you said, so Dallas did win, so they're 4-1. Philly did pull off at 1, so and Philly's 5-0, and obviously the Giants won in London early this morning. So yeah, they're 4-1. So like you said, it is a panic because you think about it, and like we talk about this every weekend. We'll probably talk about this every weekend, week in and week out, where when you took over this team in 2020, Philly was a laughing stock. Look at them now; they're undefeated. They're probably one of a good team. The Giants was a team that they didn't even win 4 games sometimes in the season. Now they've won 4 games already. The division has changed since you came, and the only constant is you being under 500, and that's the problem. And that's where there is a panic. There's got to be a sense of urgency at this point because, like we even talked about last week, where we were talking about we were only 3 out. Now we're 4 out.
Yeah.
We're 4 out. So now we talked about a month. This is gonna be a month and some change. Like, cause it's to a point where things gotta have to happen catastrophically for us to even get back into contention. And considering the fact that you had 2 already, you've already had 2 divisional games. So it's just one of those where it's just like you have to panic. And like I understand, like you said, there's a sense of urgency. There shouldn't be a sense of urgency, but it is. It has to be a sense of urgency, especially considering the fact of and then one of the comments where this can't be changed overnight. Well, the other 3 teams that you go against twice a year, they've done stuff over that, maybe not be overnight, but over a semblance of time since you've been here. So it's like, what's the excuse? And like you said, the hot seat. If him and Matt Rule, like, and it's odd. Carolina, y'all want y'all coach back? y'all want Ron Rivera back?
Hey, you know what's funny? I don't remember who said it, who tweeted it last week. But when Ron Rivera said it's not going to happen overnight, they tweeted out, "You've had 1,036 nights since you've taken over." Like, We're not asking for overnight. We're asking for gradual improvement, which we have not
Right.
seen. But just on an interesting note, Ron Rivera during his time in Washington, just in Washington, has been above 500 twice. His
Yeah.
very first his very first year won in week 1 against Philly, and then 4 weeks ago against Jacksonville. That has been the only 2 times that he has been above 500.
Embarrassing. It's embarrassing. And this is where, because you think to yourself like, because I'm thinking like when you said it, I was like he was, but then obviously because the first 2 wins, I mean because
Yeah,
they were opening day wins. So and that's where it's just like, and you just seeing everything else in this league where you even look at like a Jets, even though I know they played the third string quarterback today, but they're turning themselves around. They're not, and then hell, even the Houston Texans won today. Like
good for
that's the
them.
thing. Great for them. And like but the thing about all that is things are happening around this league, and people are winning football games. And then you're sitting here telling us, "Well, don't worry, don't panic."
Right.
It's 5 weeks in. You've only won one game. The last time you won a game it's been a month. It's been a month since you won a game. It would be a month. What's today? Today is the 9th. So the 11th is what, Tuesday.
Yep.
So yeah, you haven't won a game in almost 28 days. You haven't won a game in 28 days. And there's no sense of panic. Like, this is a results driven league. Like, this is a what have you done for me lately? Like, no one's gonna sit there and think about what you did in Carolina, that 15-1 season. No one's gonna care about
Yeah.
that type of stuff. And it's just like this type of stuff is just like, and and it's one thing and that's one thing too. You have to have some sense of urgency to a point where, hey, you gotta get this stuff done. Like it gets to a point where it's just like I just do not understand what's the rationale behind that. And even in his presser today, he's upset at like the questions that are being asked, like obviously like with the timeouts and all that type of stuff. But I'm like, this is what you have to make sense of what happened. Like, and I understand, yeah, you're upset and all, but you have to make sense of what happened today. Like, there's a lot of questions that need to be asked about what happened today. And for you to be kind of standoffish is kind of like, I mean, hey, this is a part of it all. So yeah, I mean,
It's because he knows. He knows he wanted full control of this roster. He got it, and this
yeah,
roster sucks.
exactly.
Especially and that's the thing. The roster doesn't suck. The
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 trenches.
offensive line is trash.
Yeah. And
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 he
what I'm bad.
and he has done nothing to address the linebacker. His position, the position
Right.
he played in the NFL. Not only him, his defensive coordinator as well.
Coordinator.
Both played linebacker in this
In the
league
league.
at the highest level.
Level.
He was part of, in my opinion, the second best defense to
Defense.
ever play. I do
Right.
put the 2012 Seahawks above the 85 Bears. That's just me. We can argue about it. Let me
No,
know.
man. We're
I
quiet.
do
We'll talk about
put
that later.
I do put 2012 Seahawks defense above the 85 Bears. But you have what a lot of people think is the best defense to ever be assembled, and you cannot figure out the linebacking position. If nothing else, our linebacking core should be the best in the league.
I know, and that's weird. Like, I always look at that stuff too, and then also, we talk about like as far as personnel that we let go, and you think about it. And now I sit down and think about it, like as far as guys. Obviously you brought up, Brandon Sheriff, Eric Flowers, and then you think about one of his first idiotic moves was getting rid of Trent Williams. And
So I don't blame him for that. He had to. Trent was not coming back regardless.
yeah, I know.
When he was hired, he did sit down with Trent, and he did try. And I'm pretty sure at that point Trent was like, doesn't matter, and because for Trent it wasn't it really did go all the way up to the owner and the front office.
Yeah.
And I think at that point Trent was done.
Yeah, and that's one thing too, where that fence should have been mended, and I hope that does. Not saying that he'll ever suit up for Washington, but I like as far as when he goes to Canton, will he be when he goes to Canton, will he sign a 1 year deal with us and become a commander for life? I
Yeah.
think that's what I want. I want that fence to be mended. But yeah, but the thing about this is just like, but yeah, I mean, it's what a hell of a game. What a damn game that was.
So let me ask you
What a
this.
terrible game.
So
Yeah,
just to put you on the spot real quick.
yeah.
Well,
Mhm.
obviously nobody's fired yet, but I'm fairly certain that Ron Rivera will be fired at some point this season. He might be the first coach fired on Black Monday. Who do you look at to replace him?
A lot of people. What's weird? So it's a few people I've had in mind in a sense, and it's kind of it's somewhat like a backwards thinking. I definitely like the defensive coordinator for San Francisco. I can't believe I forgot his name already. Because I get him confused. Not Ryan Mose. Is it Ryan Mose? No, it ain't Ryan Mose. It's God. What's his name? D'Amico? No, is it D'Amico Ryans?
Yeah, D'Amico Ryan.
Yeah, D'Amico Ryans. I always get those guys that play for Houston for some bizarre. Like I get him. Remember Amobia Kobe? Like remember him?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why I always think that's him, but I'm like no. So to me, I think he would be good. I think anybody comes from like that Shanahan type of regime because you look at like what Mike McDaniel's is doing, Robert
Yeah.
Saleh's doing, and the Jets. Like he's developed a nice tree. He would be a short list, but I know we need somebody offensively. But I think with a guy like D'Amico Ryans, I think it could work. I think he should be. He would be like my front guy as far as who would be the head coach. I leaned a lot of it towards Eric Bieniemy, but a part of me is like, there's a reason. Like it's kind of one of those where I don't have a good read on him, even though I like. This is where I get confused, and that's one thing too, where like sometimes it's like you just need to trust people who know about him and don't listen to the noise. Because obviously, uh, I know someone who I got Darren Smith. I don't think he's came on our show before. He came on a couple of I think he came on like See You Sunday. He came on some of our shows all together, but he covers the Chiefs. He talks about Eric Bieniemy in a way like, hey, he'll be a great coach. But then I need to just stick with what Darren said. He knows the in and outs of that organization more than more than just about anybody. He's been with the Chiefs for almost 30 years or what have you for a long time. But then I hear the Shady McCoys. And they're like, he don't know how to run the offense. All he do is yell. But then I'm like, well, LaShawn McCoy only had a cup of coffee in Kansas City. So it's almost like,
Right.
why am I letting him affect somebody who's actually an insider who covers the team day in, day out, who says and illustrates just about damn near every day about Eric Bieniemy and
Right.
can kind of clear up those type of rumors. And he's always been good as far as like clearing up those type of the rumors and innuendos. People say, well, he doesn't call plays and this and third. But there's a lot of guys who were offensive coordinators that didn't play calls. Like our guy LaFleur, he didn't play, he didn't do it in Tennessee. But look what he's doing in Green Bay. Yeah. So who you thinking?
So I just want to touch on the point you talking about Mike McDaniels and what he's doing. He's getting quarterbacks killed out here. I just want to say that.
Oh boy, yeah. I mean,
that's a whole. And I wish I didn't have the work schedule that I had because I wanted to talk about that so bad on a Cruise Island episode. But that's neither here nor there. I like D'Amico Ryans. Eric Bieniemy is first top of my list as far as offensive minds go.
mm-hmm.
Second, and really this is my only list offensively, Eric Bieniemy and Byron Leftwich. What he's been able to do in Tampa Bay is awesome. He was one of my favorite quarterbacks as a kid. Remember seeing him play in Jacksonville. I liked him a lot. But That's really my short list. We have pretty much the same list. Bieniemy, I have Leftwich, and then I wouldn't be mad at D'Amico Ryans either, just because of what Shanahan he is producing a lot. He has produced a lot of head coaches. And we're not going to speak on the fact that all of those coaches were once on this Washington staff
Yeah, I know,
as
right?
well, and they
I
all have
know
winning records right now.
all of them, all of them. And that's the thing where, and yeah, I forgot about Byron Leftwich as well. Like, and then obviously with the DC connection as well, he would definitely be he would be, I would say not necessarily the prodigal son, but he'll be, someone that, could be potentially the messiah of the DMV for us
Right.
potentially. So yeah, and I think so. And I think it's just one of those where he said we know how this thing is going to go, and it's almost like if they continue on this path, and I think even if they even fall short and don't make the playoffs, regardless, that Ron Rivera is going to be out. I think, like you said, it's almost to a point where, especially now in a league where it's not a 5-year plan, the guys are getting, it's less than that, especially looking at the success of other teams in this division and how the NFL, in essence, is like a turnover thing where it's just like, the parity is great, where it's like there's no need for you to be bad for 3 years in a row.
Right.
Something is when you have so much other opportunities, you have like obviously like last place schedules, then also just the turnarounds and roster, draft picks, all kind of stuff that can make you a better team quicker than what people deemed as like, oh, you got 5 years to turn it around. No, you don't have 5 years to turn this thing around.
No, you don't. Because then it goes back to Ron Rivera. This can't happen overnight. Brian Daboll is basically doing with the Giants literally overnight. This is his first year as a Giants head coach. This is his first year, right?
Yeah, this is first year. Yeah.
4-1 as a head coach.
Right.
Same thing with Tic Tac Toe up in Philadelphia.
So Nick.
Nick Sirianni.
Yep.
Second season. First season went to the playoffs as a wild card last year. Second season has them sitting at 5-0. Arguably the best team. They're obviously number one in everybody's power rankings. No, obviously, if the playoffs started today, number one seed in the NFC, home field advantage. Right now, looking like MVP front runner Jalen Hurts. It's like it can happen overnight. It really can.
Yeah.
You just need the right pieces. You need the right assistant. You need the right people around you, which Ron Rivera does not have. And Ron Rivera himself is probably not the right person.
I know, and that's the thing where it's just like I don't. For the life of me, just like you said, you can do this. Like it's like one of those things where it's just like those excuses. You can't use it as a valid excuse because we see this often and time again. And like you said, and Brian Daboll, and now you look at even like with the Giants, they're learning how to win in the fourth quarter. What was one of their biggest issues? They're learning now to play in the fourth quarter and they know how to win. Obviously, great wins against Green Bay, a great fourth quarter stop, fourth down stop for them in London this week, and then week 1 when they went to Tennessee and they did their thing, in Tennessee, and and they've had their opportunities, and even in that Dallas game and that loss, they still had an opportunity to win that football game. So, I mean, Jackson literally can be potentially 5-0. And like you said, and that's where it's interesting because they really never did necessarily have a roster overhaul in a sense, not in the grand scheme of things, but that shows you, hey, they can win. Like this is they can win a football game, and they can win football games, and they have a and that's I think that's the biggest issue. I think for us, it's like, hey, why can't these type of things happen to us? Everybody, so everybody got the same, 24 hours and everybody else can do it overnight. But hey, but that's here, nor there. But yeah, so we'll put a bow in the post game. Yeah. So Rob, final thoughts and social media and what you got going on.
Y'all already know where you can find me, FNC Pod on Twitter, Football and Show Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. Again, I don't have anything big in the near future. Before I permanently move down here to San Diego, I don't have my setup right now. But once I do, obviously, is getting straight into postseason prep, and then obviously offseason prep with a big focus on what this Commanders team is going to do in April.
Yeah, who knows? Because if you're looking at it now, I think we're the owners of the 3rd overall pick. So I'm like,
who else is 1-4? Obviously Houston.
I think because Houston won today, so I think let me actually look at the updated.
Shit. So they won 2 games now.
They won 1 because remember they had that tie.
Oh, they tied.
Yeah, I think we are 3rd. I'm gonna actually pull it up because I know they were saying that we're 3rd. And let's see, Tankathon. Okay, hold on. Oh, you know why? I hadn't thought about it. So okay, because it was Carolina, Pittsburgh, Detroit, and then Washington. Which I'm thinking
shouldn't we be above Detroit since they?
That's what I'm thinking too. So it'll be Carolina, Pittsburgh, and then us. Yeah, so we're 3rd. So Carolina's number 1. And Pittsburgh, and I know. Let me not even do it because I'm over here acting like it's March already. I'm acting like it's the draft order already. But that's gonna be interesting. And then and one thing I just hope New Orleans have a successful season because I do not want Philly to have a top draft pick. On top of that, I'm like, oh my gosh, that would be a death blow for the NFC East. But yeah, so Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, my other podcast, Couch Coach Live. Check out the podcast anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify. We're there. Then also Commanders in the Chat podcast. You can check us out on anywhere. Apple, Spotify is there. Social media, Commanders ITC. That's on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as well. And and we got a great show lined up for you. So we got a quick turnaround for the Commanders in the Chat. So we'll have a show live on Tuesday, 8:00 Eastern Standard Time. We'll preview our matchup with the Chicago Bears. We have a special guest joining us on Tuesday to preview our matchup on Amazon. So,
also real quick, we may have something special on Thursday. Got to kind of work out the details. We'll talk about it right now.
Okay.
But once we get off here, but we might have something special for you guys on Thursday.
Okay. Hey, I'm here for it. You feel me? But yeah. So yeah, man. So this has been this week's. Well, not this week's, but this has been the Commanders in the Chat post game. And we're here, and man, we'll catch you guys in 48 hours, man. So and we're out.